What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Omnic Lab. We're episode 180 this week, and we're going to be talking about the 3.2.1 patch that's not probably coming to Overwatch, that's discussed by Jeff Kaplan on those forums, as well as the brand spanking new Lunar New Year event, Year of the Rat. And my name's Rob. Joining me all the way back in my home country, America, in Georgia, we have Andres Gomez. What's up, dude?
Ayo, how's it going? 180, dude, we're racking it up. Almost at 200 episodes already.
Yeah, if you guys are keeping track, we're closing in there. We got about 24 months, or sorry, 24 weeks. Wow, it has been a long weekend.
Yeah, we're going on a small cadence, one episode a month now.
Yeah, yep, for sure. Well, this week, you guys, we're going to be talking pretty much everything about the forum posts and kind of just some thoughts and opinions on that one, as well as just basically it's a quick rundown of what other things we got with the patch today. So we're going to be closing out some news, talking about just some surprise update that happened actually. And Andres, I'm going to kick it back to you real quick just to do some brief housekeeping announcements.
Let's do it. As always, keep an eye out for game night coming up at the end of this month, January 31st. Unfortunately, I don't know if I'll be able to make it. I'll be coming back from San Diego that day. I have some work-related stuff, but I'm sure that everybody else is gonna be there. I know Rob's gonna be there. Last game night was super fun. We had a ton of people come out for Christmas, so I imagine this is gonna be the first one of the year, and everyone's ready to try out the new patch and all the new changes that have been happening, which we'll be discussing today. But yeah, Overwatch is looking exciting. That being said, check out our Patreon coaching as well. This month has been super busy. I've met with so many of you and had some great coaching sessions. This weekend I did 4. Last week I did 4 as well. And I have a few more for next week. If you guys haven't signed up, or if you guys are at this tier and haven't signed up, Rob still has some open spaces, and I still have a little bit of open spaces for next week. So make sure you get in there before the end of the month. And for those of you who are interested in this, it's a really enjoyable time. I really enjoy spending time with you guys and learning how you guys are progressing. We've had some guys that have made huge improvements. One of the guys I was coaching has hit masters and is working on getting masters on his second role now. This other person has joined the team, and she's super excited about starting her journey in it, and she's improved so much as well. She's transitioning into other characters from her own role and has been looking for help on that. So everyone does their own thing. Everyone focuses on their own goal, and we try to enable you guys for that goal. Believe it or not, because we've been doing this, or at least talking about this, for 3 years, we've acquired a wealth of knowledge, at least on every hero. So I can promise you we can give you at least a few tips on everyone that you say to play. Yep, that'll do it for today.
So let's go through the Year of the Rat, ladies and gents. This is a January 16th to February the 5th, according to the Central Blizzard time, which is Pacific Standard as of this current time period. Until the spring, you guys will have that to check on the website. I've included a patch link as well as the event link. They are separate because the event has the typical thing that they've been trying to do this year with Blizzard events, where they're trying to do a promotionary thing alongside of all of the loot box skins. So first and foremost, they have 3 new event skins that you can do. The first one is in this first week is Doomfist. This is January 16th to January 23rd. The next one will be Winston. The Doomfist skin is called Monk Doomfist, so kind of a monk attire, robes, Chinese style Zen monk. He actually looks like he's cosplaying as Zenyatta. It's kind of cool. The other one is the Winston Ancient Bronze skin. This is going to be the 23rd, right after Doomfist, to January 30th. And then closing us out is the very cool paper cutting Wrecking Ball skin that kind of looks like a mix of a paper lantern and a golden version of Hammond that's piloting the new mech suit. So very cool for the Year of the Rat. Very fitting to also have Hammond be the Year of the Rat, kind of hamster rodent filling that role. So that was very cool. That's January 30th to February 5th. That is all of the event weekly things. Of course, you need to win 3, 6, and 9 respectively for the icon, then the spray, and then the skin respectively. But you have to do those 9 wins not once for all of them, but once each time for each week. So that's
Yeah,
a
each
total
week.
of 27 wins in the course of 3 weeks. And now this is not limited to competitive and quick play. You can do this in arcades as well. But I don't believe if you win a game in custom games, it will count. So just keep that in mind. If you're running custom games or scrims, you will not get credit.
Yeah, no custom games. I like when they do that though. I like when they give out the skins through the events and by playing rather than like you always have to get them through loot boxes. Um, the skins have been pretty cool. Honestly, I know that a lot of them have some historical significance and allude to a lot of like cultural stuff for the lunar year. I don't know a lot of them, but I do like all the designs and all the crazy like dragon stuff that they come out. My favorite one so far has been the Sombra one though. Have you seen her?
Yes, this one is amazing. It's Face Changer Sombra. Like
Yeah.
every once in a while, her mask will actually change color, shape, and design. And you can actually see a lot of what the individual pieces are by going to your player profile and selecting the different icons. I've selected one that looks like Zenyatta's head mixed with a little bit of geisha style makeup, but it's not the Japanese geisha. It's more of the Chinese opera style. So it's very, very
The
cool.
the first time I saw the skin, it was like in one of the faces. It is one of the more colorful ones, and it just looked
Hmm.
kind of ridiculous because it didn't go with the rest of the outfit. I was like, "What? This skin is terrible. Why would they make it?" And then like her face changes on the spot. I'm like, "Oh, wait, does it actually do that in game?" And then it like changes again into another face, and like now it makes sense, right? She goes through this like
Hmm.
rotation of like really crazy phases, and all of them look kind of cool. But yeah, I think that the first time that I saw it, it was one of the more like ridiculous ones, kind of like out there. I was like, "What is
Hmm.
this skin?" But yeah, it's a really cool skin.
Yeah. I'm not 100% on this because of my lack of knowledge for Chinese opera and how this is like super ancient tradition. But if you're familiar with kind of Shakespearean style plays and in kind of European history, these are basically representative of characters in plays instead of just acting out the characters. When you go to the stage with stage makeup on, they would run with a mask on. And so the mask would represent different characters in the play and make it very highly noticeable as to who the characters were based off of what masks they were
Ah,
wearing.
very
Now,
cool.
the further point would be I'm not sure if these masks are representative of characters in Overwatch per se, or if they are more generalized in Chinese culture for this particular event. But they definitely have one that's supposed to symbolize Zenyatta for sure, because it has the whole Krillin nine dots, I guess you could say, from Dragon Ball Z on the top to symbolize the monk. There's also Mask Dancer Moira, which is very, very cool. This is kind of more of the mask festival where they're on the streets doing dancing. Then you have Samulnori Lucio, and this is Korean culture. This is very adjacent to the skin we got last year for Tracer. And then we have Opera Brigitte, which I believe might be the same kind of Asian culture for the opera, but this is going to be in Korea instead of China. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that that is also true. And we
Okay.
also got a fun surprise right before the event dropped. We got a big thing from Overwatch League that Brigitte will be getting a GOAT, or greatest of all time, aka GOAT Brigitte, to represent the GOAT's meta, and has some GOAT themology on her armor for the Overwatch League. If you sign up for that, that will be available in the store on February. Ah, shoot, I lost it on my show notes here.
I heard about that though. Yeah,
February
they doing
6th.
the February 6th. Okay. There was some controversy. Some people being like, "Well, no, why are you doing this? This abomination! Get it out of my face." Some people were like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. Like a skin to commemorate that era of Overwatch." I think it's cool. It's a cool reminder of where Overwatch was at one point, and it's an era that's never gonna come back, right? There's not gonna
Yeah.
be 3 tanks, 3 healers, at least not in the format that we're currently playing in the 2-2-2 format. that might
Plus
change
the
in the
shield
future.
and the shield looks pretty cool, guys. Come on, it's
The shield
objective.
does look pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty
I don't
freaking
play much
cool.
Brigitte, but I'll probably get it.
I did play her a little bit this week, and I have to say she's not too bad.
No, she's good.
Yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised with some of the setups that they ran. She's pretty good at what was the map that we ran? It was Busan Shrine, I think is what it's called. Busan Shrine, where it's like the big drum in the center. That's where I was able to play her quite effectively. And I think Ilios for a little bit. If they were running double dive on us, we just ran Brigitte and smashed the Genjis when they came after us. It was helpful. But yeah, that's basically all of the little events and kind of other niches. And the main skins, of course, there's a plethora of new other things, but we're kind of just squashing everything down to the main skins. There's a couple other new things there that you can go check out in the What's New tab in the game. Let's talk about patch 1.44, which is what we talked about last week, because holy crap, this patch launched immediately. Apparently 3 to 4 days after we covered it, or literally we covered the patch pretty much about a day or two after we got news of it. Then this launched, and we've been talking about this one pretty much right after. And I don't know if we've had this fast of a turnaround time from PTR to live in a long time, Andres.
It was very fast. I almost wonder if they were working on this internally for a while, then put in the PTR sort of like right when they came back from Christmas, but they were like, yeah, this is good to go, and they just shipped it. Granted, they did make a big change to the Doomfist recovery time, right? We talked about his uppercut had a 0.5 second recovery time or half a second recovery time, and that's a long time in Overwatch. That's almost like a McCree flashbang at that point. They reverted that to 0.35 seconds, so a third of a second instead. It's noticeable, but to be completely honest with you, if you are an average Doomfist like I am, you will probably not notice this change that much. You do have to adjust a little bit because you won't be able to kind of turn or maneuver too much after you do the uppercut, but it lasts for just a second. So it really affects the top tier Doomfists, which were really used to kind of slamming and then uppercut and almost immediately following up with a shot. Yeah, before the target even left the ground, the shot was already in their face. Guys like Chipsa would do this all the time and delete heroes out there. What do you think about this change personally? I know people are kind of in both camps.
I know I haven't gotten a full thing because I did see that Chipsa got highlighted on a Fresh Nuts video. If you guys follow Fresh Nuts on YouTube, he's a very big YouTube creator that publishes a lot of highlights and highlights top plays from a lot of different skill ranks, not just mainstreamers, but definitely some mainstreamers get on there quite often, like our good friend Autogay, who's a Hanzo Pro in Finland, I believe. EU ladder. But Chipsa did say that he was clapping and very happy with this change and it's not being the 0.5. He's like, if you're gonna nerf Doomfist with this particular thing, this is the right amount of time, because basically for Doomfist players, you don't really feel it that much. And with Favor the Shooter, it essentially feels about the same from his point of view. But for you as a support player, especially, you'll notice this a lot more. I felt like I actually had a good chance to pull up my shield if I'm on Brig, or deploy a shield on Sigma. You can at least start the animation before you're getting shot. And when you're winding up your sleep dart with Ana, it gives you 1.5 longer to get that thing, or sorry, not 1.5 longer, 0.15 longer to get that shot out. So I feel like this is much better than the 0.5. And essentially they went and they basically doubled it before. It was almost double, and now it's kind of in the middle between the 2 points. And this feels a little bit sharper, but they didn't say anything. They just shipped the changes and they're like, this is the only thing we're tweaking. And so we had two unprecedented things for the PTR. Not only was it shipped in under a week, but they shipped it and changed something, which is rare, super rare. So I'm pretty happy with that. But I have my own theory about why they might have done this, because this patch is what they're playing in Overwatch League.
Yes.
So them pushing this out as fast as humanly possible post-break gives the Overwatch League travel regimen that are supposed to, I think, be arriving this week for practice regimens in their local
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, if you want your Overwatch League teams to start practicing in the right patch, you want to get it out there as soon as possible. Yeah. That being said, I think that Blizzard got a lot of immediate feedback with Doomfist because with the previous
Sure.
change, it wasn't only like now there's a window of opportunity for the enemy to react, but there's a big enough window of opportunity for them to react and kill you.
Yeah.
Um, Now there's a window big enough so that if you're on it and you clutch out the skill, you do it at the right time, you'll be able to, like you said, sleep dart him, flashbang him, stun him with Brigitte, or other stuff, right?
Oop.
Like Hanzo might be able to get out of the
Headshot.
way. Hit him with a headshot. Same with Widowmaker, etc. It opens like this like skillful window of time where the enemy, if good enough, can react and sort of keep themselves away from danger. That being said, you can still get a ton of kills with Doomfist. If you're a good Doomfist, and you know what you're doing, you know how to
Mm.
maneuver with him and kind of like come out of nowhere with him, trust me, you will still get plenty of kills. You just won't
Yeah.
get as many instant kills for like the top echelon of Doomfist, which it's been happening to the hero for a while, right? Doomfist is a hero that is very how do I should put this?
Polarizing.
Right. No, but what I'm looking is his abilities don't require a lot of finesse. For example, like how Sleep Dart requires, right? The Sleep Dart is a very tiny ability that has a very small margin to miss, right? Because it's a tiny projectile. Doomfist's abilities, on the other hand, have a wide area of effect, right? So even though you do need to master his movement and can understand the physics of
And
the
timing.
engine and the timing of it, the timing is super important with Doomfist.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
it doesn't require like that finesse that maybe landing like a sleep dart does, or landing a Widowmaker headshot, for example.
Precision is that the word you're looking for on
Precision,
this?
yes, thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
precision. You have to be in the general ballpark with Doomfist's abilities. So, my point
Mm.
is, with those abilities, you don't want to make him so strong that they can just one shot you that easily, right? Because then it starts feeling a little bit unfair. Like, oh, this guy only needs to slam me and uppercut me. And as long as he
Mm.
does that, I'm dead, right? As Anna, you're like, I need to land like I need to 180 and land my sleep
Mm.
dart if I want to survive. Which like the in proportion, one of them is harder to do than the other one, right? So you want his abilities to be at a point where they're effective, but they're not just immediate one shot kills. You want to enable those other abilities to sort of shine through as well. And I think that they have him in a pretty good spot, in my opinion. Some people might think,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, he's not as good anymore," but if you know what you're doing in Doomfist, you will get value out of him still.
Especially when you have your ultimate available to you. Getting up to 600 HP is relatively easy. I actually had a little chit chat on Twitter with your Overwatch guys, and they're like, Doomfist is crazy strong and potentially needs to be nerfed again because of the whole stuff with. They were just upset that like Roadhog doesn't get the chance to shoot him with a full clip and still survive in the middle of a team. Like just ults and then gets his whole abilities and can kill you with like basically 2 rotations after an
Hmm.
ultimate is a little obscene. But I understand that from that point of view. But I feel like any hero in Overwatch, if you're doing the game well relatively properly and playing a DPS hero, if you've got your ultimate, you should be favored to win against anything, regardless of who you're playing against. And if the decisions that you're making are strong or bad, doesn't really matter. Like you're in basically overpower state when you're using your super or you're using your ultimate in this case. So that makes sense to me, but I understand differing opinions on that one. But um let's move on. The other thing too, just to be warning, I did notice this a little bit, but there are some weird bugs right now, and that could just because of how fast they shipped it, and maybe they didn't get a chance to catch them all before they went out. But there is a very strange flickering bug with, especially with like tanks, it's way more noticeable. But when things die, there is a very common bug where the bodies will flicker if you're within a close vicinity of the body, and like almost like visually, if you know how they have the seizure warnings for people that have a visual seizure trigger, um, that's kind of like what it reminds me of when I saw it. It happened a couple times in our games when Anders and I were playing with like a Winston or a Reinhardt body. It was really really crazy weird. There's also this weird bug with Genji dash right now where it will basically it's called rubber banding, but it's basically like when you dash, it like yanks you back as if you basically pulled a rubber band and then released it. It kind of goes back to where it started. That's why they call it rubber banding,
Hmm.
especially on high ping and high MS. Basically, when you're playing it, that is way more prevalent. And also when you try to perform a ghost dash technique, or basically when you perform a kill with the dash and you basically double tap it so it looks like you didn't dash at all the second time, but you end up getting double the distance. It rubber
Yeah,
bands really hard.
it's. I'm sure it'll get hot fixed pretty soon, or pretty quick. So by the time you're listening to this, it might not even be there. But if you are experiencing this, just know that you're not going crazy. I had
Yeah,
some
it
weird
is
stuff
a bug.
happen to me this week with Genji, where dashed through an Ana, and even though and she slept me, but I completed the dash, and I ended like way on the other side of her, slept.
Hmm.
It was really weird because normally when you get slept, you stop your dash and you
Stops momentum.
yeah, it stops the momentum right there. But yeah, I guess with this weird like rubber banding and stuff, it's kind of like registering really weird with some abilities.
Yep. 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 All right, I think that covers pretty much all of the little things here. There's one more thing with the patch that came out, functionally for competitive, and that is Party Flex Roll Queue. So if you guys are enjoying this, please let us know what you think, because Andres and I had a good time adjusting this, and it was quite amusing to see literally everyone checking the damage boxes, then getting forced into the other one that they chose anyways. So that was quite amusing, but it's really helpful.
It's kind of fun. We were six stacking last night, and everybody chose a bunch of different roles. So honestly, it was like pinata six stack. It was like
Yep.
I don't know. It was like
Let's see what happens.
mystery heroes six stack. Like, ooh, who's
Yep.
gonna end or mystery roles, I should say.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
was hilarious because at some points we ended up with like our main healer as our tank. And
That's
yeah,
good.
some interesting games ensued. We had a good
Hmm.
time though.
It sounds like fun. Yeah, there's also a really fun thing that's going on right now for the arcade. The arcade got a Blitz CTF mode that is competitive. So, as per usual, with Lunar New Year being the CTF time of year, or capture the flag, there is a new Blitz CTF, which means that you now have the flags much closer together, which means that the flags are easier to get, the flags are easier to cap because you don't have to travel as far, and they double the score requirement. So you only have to be the first team to 6 rather than to 3. So they basically make everything closer, double the amount of score you need to win, and then they also make the original CTF available. So get out there and enjoy your capture the flag if that's your cup of tea this time around. I'm probably going to run in there and test it out, see how it goes. It's always fun because by the time a year rolls around, there's new heroes to play in that mode. There's new kinds of things going on in the mode. There's new balance changes, all that stuff that might actually implement a whole different meta in CTF based off of what it was last time. So it could be fun. Go out there and enjoy it. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes here, which is the Jeff Kaplan post about internal testing of 3 DPS, 2 supports, and 1 tank. So, to kind of lay some groundwork, I know I'm talking a lot here, but I'll turn it over to Andres relatively quickly here. This was something that they said, don't panic. We're not, it says, don't freak out. Quote, we're not doing this for 222. I'm only sharing the design experiment that's going on here. That was kind of the initial thing that he said at the beginning, relatively speaking, for why they're doing this. So the entire discussion that Andres and I are having is not as if this is going to be, but rather commentary on what their testing results were, how long they did it, sharing some more transparency, and kind of seeing where the development is going creatively. So that's kind of where we're coming from here. Andres, thoughts? Anything that popped out of you in the article to start us off?
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting. I'm happy that they are conducting this kind of experiment internally. I would find it really interesting if they could bring this experiment to the community somehow. I know they have to be sort of discreet with this kind of thing because this is a fundamental change, right? Like introducing this change would basically make Overwatch into a different game. We would have to like really, really adapt, kind of like how we went with 222 and we had to be like, okay, now this is the way that the game is played. These options are no longer available. If we do this, it's sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
It could be a good change. I think that is a change that is aimed at the current Overwatch population, right? Who actually plays the game and what do they actually like playing? I think that there's a huge demand for playing DPS. It's the biggest roster in the entire game. They have awesome heroes. A lot of them are incredibly fun to play. Like, for example, I love playing Genji. If I could play Genji every game, I would probably. I love playing heroes like McCree, Far Eyes, super fun. But when you go into the other roles, I think that sometimes the fun factor of some of the heroes diminishes a little bit. I think that the support roster honestly is in a really good spot. Honestly, playing some
Agreed.
of the supports feel like playing DPS in this
Yeah.
meta right now. But the tank roster, I think that still struggles just a little bit. I think that the main offender for me, and I know a lot of you will differ from this opinion, but the fun factor of Arissa is just not quite there for me. Her plays are mostly not flashy. If you're playing Orisa correctly, you're just setting up your team to do everything, or to take the glory, basically. Your halt sets up another person to get the kill. Your supercharger sets up your entire team to get kills, right? You're just boosting everyone else. Your shield is sort of just there to not allow them to get you off the point, and your only other cooldown, it's just a flat out damage reduction. There's like not that much.
She's the most like flat creative thing that we have for tanks.
Right,
Like
even
as
some
far as
of
what
the
it looks
other
like.
even some of the other tanks are much more engaging. Like when you're a Reinhardt and you get an Earth Shatter and a bunch of people, that feels good. You
Or
just
fire strike through a window,
right, and
a BAP window.
land,
That's
yeah, you
great.
land a good fire strike. Oh, dude, that's like, oh, gotcha. You kill that
Very
Pharah with your
satisfying.
fire strike. It's like, oh yeah, that felt good, right? And it's
Right.
flashy a little bit, right? People will be like, oh,
Winston and
dude,
Diva
Reinhardt.
have like the capability of just jumping. Like that feels awesome in any game when you can jump. It's
Hmm.
super cool.
I think Sigma has been a Blizzard attempt to sort of like draw some of the DPS players into that role, trying to
Yeah.
see like, okay, why do these people find fun? Like accretion, for example, is a very fun ability. The
Hammond
shield
too.
is very dynamic. Yeah, I think Hammond appeals to like Doomfist players, right? Like or Genji players, that players that really like abusing
Mobility.
the mobility and the movement in the game.
Yeah.
But that being said, the roster is hasn't been made to withstand like a single tank, right? So going into this change, the question does arise, and he did position this question: is what are we gonna do with the tanks, right? Where do we put
Yeah.
him? Do we change him fundamentally so that they all become more like Orisa, or do we put him on different roles? Like they were saying, Roadhog was the main example, right? Do you put him
Well,
in damage
to,
or tank?
to be fair, they were saying, what do we do with the off tanks specifically? The off
Right.
tank, the non barrier thing. What do we do with them? That's kind of
Hmm.
what their main point was. Yeah.
And they acknowledge that the off tank, it's a concept that evolved sort of over time, right? Because if you remember, the game was supposed to be played pretty freely. There were different varieties of tanks, but when the game was
Sure.
created, there wasn't like these are gonna be the main tanks because you could choose several of them or none, right? There was no two
Hmm.
to two. The game was pretty free, so you could do whatever you wanted in that sense. Um, Going to one tank, it's like, okay, now there's a ton of pressure on those single tanks, right? The tanks that don't have the capability of like sustaining as much now are less desirable by the entire team. Naturally, just not because those heroes are not fun or anything, but if you're only gonna have one tank, you want to at least have the tank that can contest the objective and has the most sustain, right?
Yeah. The other thing that they mentioned was stuff like if they're running only one tank, there's a lot of like mental anxiety and pressure on that tank because if they
Right.
die, there's a tremendous amount of more pressure on the team. And we've talked innately and in and out of the podcast about how powerful tanks are. And if you remove one of the two of them from the game and add another DPS, you're not necessarily making the tanks less powerful. You're making them even more important than they were prior. Because now, if they die, they're the most important thing to die. And if you've
Hmm.
got like a single barrier instead of two barriers and a two barrier split of what you're trying to play, if that barrier is down, you got nothing. Unless you're playing a full mobility comp, in which case you got to basically run around like your chicken head cut off and kill the other tank at the supports before you can do anything. So they're kind of like basically, even if you don't have a main tank and you have the double off tanks, they're still responsible for kind of the tempo and the approach for the typical game. Even in the lower ranks, they still dictate whether people will move through a choke or not.
Absolutely. Well,
And even in like gold and silver, that happens.
they dictate whether your team can contest the payload or the point, right? If you
Yeah,
don't have main
exactly.
tanks, like your team is not contesting, they're usually regrouping. As long as your tanks are alive, or at least your main tank is alive, I think that there's still a chance to win, right? Especially if like
Yeah.
there's picks on both sides. Both sides have people that have died. As long as your tanks are alive, that fight is not lost. Once they die, that's regrouping time, right? Because even if you
Mhm.
get kills, I mean, sure, you can look for kills if you're safe, but generally those kills are not gonna amount to much if you don't have tanks that can go and contest
Right.
the objective.
Right. I want to zero in on one of the things that Jeff pointed out that I think no one has really brought up in kind of the crossfire, because most people are like, this is awful and here's why. And don't do this ever, please. I know you did this for like 2 months of development internally, but to me, I was like, I don't really care about what they did internally. I want to know what they learned from the development, because as players, we don't get to participate in that unless they're bringing that to PTR or they're bringing that to a live game in some sort of arcade mode that we can go test out that people are actually playing. We have no clue what the result might be. But what the internal testing produces is that's interesting, and that is telling, because what they told us is that they even did a 1-1-4 setup with 1 support, 1 tank, and 4 damage. And he said they summarized that experiment with the word terrible. So it's pretty safe to say that's not even an option on the table. But basically, they said solo support were feeling bad because they weren't able to keep anyone up, especially if you weren't in one of the quote unquote main support categories where you have enough dealing output to even keep them up in the first place. And then when you've got 1 support, 1 tank, and you're definitely the most valuable thing with how valuable healing is in Overwatch, you're just going to get focused by 5 different aggressors every fight and
Oh
die.
yeah, that's a
So
nightmare. That's a nightmare of every support.
yeah, you just run 2 flankers and 2 backliners. So you basically run double sniper, Genji Tracer, and a Winston, and they're dead every fight. It's just literally like both teams jump the support, kill the support, and then fight it out and see who can not die first. That's basically what it'll end up being. And then on the flip side, if they're running the 3-2-1 with 2 supports and the 1 tank, they said that the game felt, quote, more DPS-y, like more DPS focused. So the supports having one more large sack of hit points that they don't have to keep up, and having a smaller pool of total health that they actually have to keep alive, they actually have a lot more downtime for shooting and playing offensively. And for players that like to play BAP and Ana and these main healing roles that also have an offensive arm, or people like Zenyatta and Lucio, that's a playground for those guys. And even Brigittas can play like frontliner. They can literally play an off tank. And those environments are crazy fun for those players. So it was really interesting how not only did it open up, the results of kind of the testing and seeing how many more DPS people would be able to play, help queue times, and lowered the overall improvement of how tank felt, it did improve other things about the game. So that was fascinating. And I wonder if they can kind of take that kind of concept and maybe increase the amount of healing that all of the healers can do, or maybe not necessarily increase it, but rather kind of put a baseline in for how much offensive pressure or offensive abilities that they give to supports, as well as healing output that they have. And if they can find a good sweet spot for all the supports, then maybe there will be just more downtime in Overwatch. It could be interesting. Or maybe even just lowering the health pool of tanks, and then there's any number of things that you could do here, but I'm not saying that this result is fruitless is kind of how I'm going about it. Maybe they
Yeah,
could make the game more like that.
I think it's definitely an interesting experiment. I think that the thing about it is that before it resembles old Overwatch, right? When we
Yeah.
when we first started playing the game, I think that a lot of people are trying to incorporate like their previous MOBA knowledge. So if you're playing League of Legends or Dota,
Yeah.
traditionally you played with 1 tank, 1
Mm-hmm.
support, and usually like 3 DPS, right? So that
Yeah.
concept already existed in the game, and a lot of people would play the game like that. They would play 1 tank, 3 DPS, and sometimes you would bring 2 support just to be able to keep everyone up. Um, so it was a common way to play Overwatch in general. The concept of 2 tanks started coming more towards like the end of the first year when Overwatch started maturing a little bit. Um, that being said, it's a slippery slope, right? Because now we've taken a format that used to be super free play whatever you want, form whatever composition you want, which had a ton of drawbacks in one sense. Too much freedom,
Right.
too many options, almost led to an inability to choose, right? From the community itself. So now we've put certain constraints, but now it's what is the right constraint, right? Is 2-2 the right constraint for what we actually have? Is that how the game should actually look? Um, and watching Overwatch progression is super interesting. So when it was first released to now, how much like we've evolved and thinking about how we want the game to be. I think that it's cool that Blizzard is doing these experiments. I would find it super interesting if they can get it to us somehow. Because I
Mm,
think that is the final test, right? They could be doing as many experiments out there they want, and inside of Blizzard it could be working. But at the end of the day, is this a format that the actual community would play? Would this
yeah.
actually improve the game? And is it worth the development power, right? Like we just came into 2-2 and we're still balancing for 2-2 at this point. So going into 3-1 is gonna be like another whole can of worms. Are we ready to make that transition? I think that giving the community a taste would be the best option forward. Because like you said, Rob, it has a ton of benefits and a ton of like drawbacks as well, right? Like tanks are like
Mm.
that's gonna be a ton of pressure on them. They're gonna have to get used to that. I'm gonna be the only one.
You
But
bringing up stuff about MOBAs, Andres, is interesting because in general, MOBAs are not 6v6; they are 5v5, and so
right.
maybe in the future, if they ever wanted to do something like this, maybe we'll see a game of Overwatch where there's 5v5 instead of 6v6. I'm
I
not saying
think
that's the pro circuit, but that could be a possibility.
that I mean, yeah, they could keep toying around with those numbers. I think they spoke with this with the first game release, where they were saying they toyed around with a lot of different numbers for team compositions, and they eventually arrived at 6 being kind of like their sweet spot. I think they were
Yeah.
saying with 5, it always felt like there was too much pressure on one of the roles to perform. I don't know. We'll see how the future changes
Yeah.
because we're doing some drastic changes here. They're toying with some drastic
Right.
changes.
We're also not really sure like what this is going to do to Overwatch 2. Like is this something that we can see as a key implementation for PvE? Maybe PvE shifts out of this because some of the stuff that we saw the PvE content was 4 players, right? It wasn't 6 players. It was just 4 or squads of 3, small squads. So I don't
Hmm.
know what they're doing there. The other side of this could be that maybe we don't get a lasting change here. Maybe everything is kind of safeguarded because they said this is 2 months of development time, at least in some kind of development. This is not pure. This is all we did for 2 months in Blizzard HQ. You know what I mean? Like they're doing more than this, folks. Like this is just a little peek behind the curtain as one of the things they've been doing in development for the last 2 months.
Hmm.
They don't just go sit at the office and go play. Like they have play testers for that, so the play testers will be playing test on this sort of thing. But I think the one thing that came out of this that I liked the most was that Jeff and the team forced themselves to commit to something for 2 months and just stay on it. They go into the office, they do this, and they go to the next day, they come in and they play it. And even if they don't like it, you can really start developing. The longer you play in something and the more you dislike something, if you can stay under it as a developer, you can start formulating better and more constructive ideals and like we were saying, pros and cons of stuff that you don't like or you do like with it. And as a player base, we're not really responsible for that because what you get is basically an ejection point or an exit point, we say in the business world. So if you're playing the game and you're not liking anymore, exit point. That's one of the easiest exit points for people is if you don't like it anymore for any reason, they're gone. There's also if something else is catching your attention more than what you're currently on, and that's more appealing to you, that's an exit point. Maybe not a permanent one, but a temporary one. So they have to kind of be waiting. How do they keep people interested in the PvP aspect is definitely a big one for competition. Even when Overwatch 2 releases and we get a bunch of PvE content, that's not going to hold me and Andres. We're here for the strats, man. Like we want to go play PvP,
Oh yeah,
assert
we'll
dominance,
we'll
man.
be we'll be doing strats no matter the format. And I think
Yeah,
it's a super interesting experiment. I think that the idea that it makes it more FPSy and it satisfies a bigger portion of the population. Like you get to play the role that you want, right?
sure.
Naturally, we have a bigger proportion of those players, so mirroring the game to mirror your population sort of makes sense. And I think that it would be very worthwhile to get this experiment in the hands of the community in some way or form, whether it be the PTR or a game mode in the arcade or something, and make it like a 2 week event or something. Like, come check out this mode, and boom, boom, boom. Even like make it like give out a skin or something for trying it out. I don't know. Get a bunch of people hyped and involved, and just make it like an event or something. Make it clear that this is not where Overwatch is going, or it's not where like we're changing it right away, but allow the community to try it out and let us see it for ourselves, right? How that would feel. Now that being said, and I've been wanting to mention this, but I do want to explore the possibilities of 3-2-1. Uh, and looking at the other side, I think that now that we've gone into 2-2-2 and people are sort of forced to play the tank role at this time for several reasons, right? One, because the queues might be too long, right? You might not want to wait that long to play another role, so you might queue tank. Two, you might get tired of people not knowing how to play that role, so you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it myself, and you go into the tank role. It might be because there are characters now that you enjoy, right? Like Hammond, Sigma are attractive to players in other roles, or you might be trying it out. But I think it's having an effect in the general population where, because it's so necessary right now to have that second tank, um, people have been learning the role. And the average skill of tanks is slowly increasing because the general population is learning that role more and more every day. That does make sense?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent. I'm kind of like tracking with it, but like I don't know if I would even want to play it for much more than like a week, like it is still an arcade thing. It's going to end up being like PTR when the community gets
Well,
their
I'm
hands
I'm
on it,
talking about 2-2 at this point, and the tank role specifically. The fact that 2-2 has been out for a while and there are long DPS queues. What I'm saying is basically is in one hand, like strong arming people into playing the tank role, which is having a side effect of making the average tanking level of the population a little bit higher because now there's more people that have to learn the role. Does that make sense?
a little bit, but I don't know how that translates to forcing people to play tank, if that makes sense. Like I understand that people queue up and play tank out of sheer ability prior to the 2-2 change, right? But like now you have to actually choose it as an option or choose it as a flex option, and then you get locked into it. So I
Right.
understand that aspect of what the angle you're going for.
Right. So over time, there will have a bigger tank pool because more people are learning that role. And I think that as long as they're actively adding stuff to that role and making the
Mm,
tanks themselves fun to play, over time, the problem might ease itself a little bit more, right? in
okay.
certain in certain ranks, actually, the tank role is not the most in demand.
Right.
Sometimes DPS is actually more in demand. Sometimes in the lower roles you don't have as many people trying to like play DPS. In fact, in masters, sometimes at certain times of the day you have really long tank and support queues and really short DPS queues, just because there's a bigger population that is playing those roles around that rank. And I think that over time, because people are being forced to play the tank, we'll have less of that disparity, right? Where like at every rank, there'll be more of an even distribution of people that can play every role. For example, they like we mentioned before, they've done a great job with supports, making them pretty engaging and fun to play. To be honest, playing Bap is pretty fun. Playing Anna is really fun. Playing Zenyatta is pretty awesome. For the people who like playing the Mercy playstyle, I think that Mercy is also pretty engaging and pretty dynamic in the way that you play her. Um, Tanks are missing that a little bit more, but we're getting there, right? Like Sigma is a step in the right direction. I think Hammond is really fun to play as well. Roadhog, a lot of people enjoy playing. Same with Zarya. Main tanks love Reinhardt, I feel, but
Yeah.
I keep bashing on Orisa. I don't mean to bash on Orisa. She's such a great character, but she does fall flat a little bit on the fun factor there. So I don't know. I think that if we continue with that 2-2-2 and we continue paying attention to that fun factor in the tank rule, we might not have to go to 3-2-1. It's all I'm saying.
Sure. I think that like that that piggybacks off of what I think that we really need to be doing here is not necessarily a compositional issue. I think the problem is a variety issue. Because what's happening is like we get like a tank and then a support and then a DPS. But the DPS is basically two different roles that are Overwatch shipped with originally for over a year and a half. They finally combined it into three categories before splitting it up into the three categories exclusively for you to go play and choose one. And now we've got it overloaded where it's almost double, or it's like I think it's over double the support category in the DPS column and over double in the tank category. And it's just like I think what it's sad to say this, but like I think that they just need to stop making DPS heroes for a while. We've got enough of them. And frankly, if you're going to make a DPS hero, give him a sack more hit points and different abilities and put him in a different category. Maybe give him a healing or something, or delay them. I mean, when Overwatch 2 releases, sure, you can ship a couple DPS heroes with it. Great. That's fine. But like, if you're going to catch up to the point where tanks and supports have enough options to actually start competing, then you got to put them in the category. But the catch 22 is because supports and tanks are more innately more powerful, you've got a way larger balance pool that you got to mess with because they are the main driving forces. Like DPS heroes can get toned up and down a little bit with damage and ability cooldown stuff. And I feel like DPS heroes are far more easy to send on the rotation of who's powerful. But like if you got a couple tanks like Sigma Rissa that are too strong for a long time, even after nerfs, it's oppressive and it feels like you're playing the same game and there's only two options. If you're going to be able to play a double barrier, there should be like 8 other double barriers that you can go play. You know what I mean? I don't want to go play the 2 that are the best. I want to, yeah. If you're gonna at least force me to play a certain style of play, I don't want to be limited to specific heroes. Let me go play League of Legends, right? You got the whole thing. You got the whole swath of heroes. People are saying, you know, picks and bans are going to be the thing to solve this. I think to a certain extent it could be. There's probably a world where that works, but to me, I feel like if you're going to do picks and bans, you might as well just make a bunch more heroes, and then into do picks and bans just makes it so that the first and the second things are still strong. It's just a matter of if they get banned, you just go to the next one. So I'm a little bit outside of the picks and bans phase just because I understand both sides of the argument, but I don't really care. To be honest, I just want more variety. I'm kind of getting sick of I know that's the thing, but like we're just not going to get those until Overwatch 2. So it's kind of like everyone's just like waiting and twiddling their thumbs, waiting for that. Because we know we've got Sojourn for sure. Echo most definitely is coming with Overwatch 2, I think. Because in the release trailer, we got new appearances for everything. They got a brand new game mode. The brand new game mode is going to change everything, I think. I'm really excited for that.
I know that they're going to release at least one more hero before Overwatch 2, or at least that's what they said their intentions were. So we might see one more person before the release, and then with the release, we are going to get like four or five new heroes.
4 or 5. So
there'll be your variety. And that's probably how a lot of people are feeling right now because there hasn't been a lot of new content releases. To be honest, I know it sounds super boring, but I kind of actually enjoy that. I like when the metas are left kind of like to evolve organically a little bit. And I think we're still in an evolution period. Like this patch just hit. Diva also got a ton of changes. I think that if you allow the community to experiment with that a little bit more, we're going to get some changes. I think the double barrier and the meta from the past patch is still very strong, and we're still gonna see that. We're not gonna deviate like super far from that right away. But I think that new paths have been opening, and new opportunities have been opening. We were able to run dive successfully many games this weekend. And to be fair, you know, it was at the lower rank, so a lot of people were not expecting it, and maybe some of them have forgotten how to deal with dive because we've been in this meta for a while. But I think that there's options out there, and like I guarantee in a month from now we're gonna see a few new things, especially with Overwatch League starting and this patch just hitting and them having a few weeks. Double shields are gonna be prevalent, but I guarantee we're gonna have some surprises there.
Yeah, I'm really excited, honestly. Like, I think that's one of the things that the Overwatch team could be doing in the background is just saying, Let's see how this goes. And then they're just doing what they said at BlizzCon this last year. They're going to do a couple changes every month. It's going to mix things up quite a bit. Maybe change a little bit things, give you some more cosmetics to go chase after, a couple new game modes, some seasonal events, and not really change too much. And then boom, we get Overwatch 2. Here's 4 heroes, and then everything's chaos. For whatever reason, their design philosophy loves that. But I don't know. Like, it's really weird because I think that like one hero legitimately changes so much, especially if it's a non-DPS hero. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Anytime they introduce a new DPS hero to the roster, the meta doesn't change a whole lot, at least for a while. And then maybe they'll pop up in the games and start being a major player. But every time they've introduced a new tank, the game has completely changed.
Yeah, I think it's because what you said. There's less options in those rosters, so when you
Yeah.
do add a new one, it can have some massive repercussions, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, Orisa and Sigma have created a whole new meta now between themselves. I think that Ryan Sigma is also a very valid composition. You can get away with running it in a lot of the maps. Let's say like King's Row. I think like Ryan Sigma is awesome. Um,
Where
Hammond
he
has also
basically took
enabled.
over for a year.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But it took time, right? A lot of these hero
Yeah.
additions took time again because people had to like learn their true potential, and the same happens with these changes. Like the changes are not as drastic as adding a whole new hero with whole new abilities that opens like a swath of options for everyone to kind of like play around. But these changes do eventually offer like new opportunities as well. So there's it's cumulative changes too, like May not being able to freeze as much, Diva having like the rocket boost in 3 seconds, Winston a while back got a little buff into his shield. Both Orisa and Sigma getting a little bit of a nerf in the amount of damage that they can take. Um, I think that all that adds up. Eventually, that people who are trying to play those other styles start finding the cracks in those
Hmm.
strategies. I think, and I don't know. I know that people talk a lot about like double shield and the meta being stale, but I think that Overwatch right now is at one of the better spots in terms of options. You can get away with playing so many things as long as you know what you're doing, right? If you're just picking something crazy just to like try it out and not doing it that well, yeah, you're gonna get rolled probably. But that being said, I don't know. I think that especially if you are playing with some friends and stuff, you can get away with so many things currently.
Yeah. It's I think that like if you kind of just back away from a lot of this, most most definitely Blizzard's main thing, I think, is they're trying to make sure that the game is poised to be fun in two different game modes so that if your exit point is from comp, you can go and play the game when Overwatch 2 comes out and you can just stay in that other mode without playing comp.
Hmm.
Because I agree that I think that comp is just not for everyone. But there are people that are committed to this game, characters. Like they love the characters, they love the story, even though there's not much of it. And they're even not committing to these roles such as tank because maybe they just don't find the character thematic enough for them to enjoy. I mean, there's any number of reasons why they would choose what they want to do and why things are popular, or that maybe that's that one player like Fitzy is like, I just love Sombra. I'm going to play Sombra all the time, every day, all day. And there's people that's actually kind of the norm. I feel like most often when Andres and I get coaching, people don't have a problem choosing a hero a lot of times. And if they do, it's because they like everything. It's kind of, they don't really limit themselves to too much besides the one, or at least the one role. It just so happens that the tanks just aren't that rich in their story outside of maybe Reinhardt. I mean, I don't know. Anders, what do you think? Maybe is there
You're talking
some
about like their lore?
psychology to that? Yeah, is there some psychology to why people are playing what they're doing rather than just raw mechanics? You think?
I mean that's probably like a conversation, like a whole conversation that we can have.
Yeah.
But they Blizzard did mention this. They did say that they do attach certain personas to certain characters, and that they can see it internally how certain personalities are attracted to certain roles, and I can totally see that. I mean, look at characters like Mercy, for example. Mercy has a huge following of people that just really like the character, not just how she plays, right, and like her mechanics inside of the game, but the character and the concept itself, right, of this like flying angel girl that is bringing healing and supporting your entire team. Like that concept, I think that resonates with a big player base, and when they see
Hmm.
that, they're like, oh yeah, yeah, I want to play that. And the same happens with a lot of other characters. I think like Genji, for example, is another character that has like that really cool factor. Like the first time that you
Yeah.
see Genji, like if you've never played Overwatch and you get shown Genji, immediately you're like, oh, that's a character in the game. You can be
Yeah.
like a cyber ninja dashing all over the place. Like it's a really engaging, cool factor, right? And I'm so sorry, Orisa. I'm gonna bring you up here again.
Let's
But
do it.
when
Let's
you
do it.
see Orisa, I don't think that a
I
lot of
resonate with the
people.
centaur. Yeah. Centaur with a gun and a shield. Yeah, that's me, man.
I mean, I'm
Identifying
sure there's
principles.
a group of people out there who would really resonate with Orisa, but I think it's a larger amount of population. Yeah. So
That's so
it's
funny.
interesting that you brought up that point. Yeah, because Reinhardt, for example, I think does resonate with a certain crowd of people, right?
Yeah.
Like the people who like the idea of being like that big defender that's there for your team. It's like that the shield for your team, right?
Just
I
like the
think
bruiser.
yeah, that and with a huge hammer and you're like the front liner. I think that does resonate with a group of people that are like, oh yeah, I want that's the fantasy I want to play into the game, right?
Hmm. It's the same
Um,
thing when you play any game. Dungeons and Dragons. If you want to go play, I don't know, like you want to go play Zelda. Some people just like run around in Zelda when you can actually choose what items you want, and they go do the whole quest for Biggoron's hammer or Biggoron's blade, which is like that two-handed weapon. Like, screw my shield, I'm using this. Anyone wants to do that. I'm the guy that always picks up the bow in any game. There's like, there's a bow, I want it. Like, I know it's bad, I'm gonna play it. Just ask Andres. We played Destiny for so long. They put bows back in the game. I binged Destiny for so long because I could just play bows again. I was like, yeah.
and you've
And then I
always
couldn't
been
play Hanzo in the
attracted to
game because of
Hanzo.
missile speed.
Yeah, but you're attracted to the character
Oh
regardless of
yeah,
the mechanics. Like you
yeah. I
like
don't care how
playing the
bad he is. I'll
character.
play him. It's kind of the same thing, but I mean, Smash Bros is pretty much the same thing. They got their characters and fighting games have their stuff based off of weight classes essentially. Even in Mario Kart, I mean, as silly as that sounds, people will play those characters because they have a high speed, low acceleration, and a big bump off of their
Hmm.
carts. They can literally just run into people without an item and boop them off the track. Um, but that all of that aside, I think what what again they're lacking is the more things that you put into a category, the more people will have opportunities to resonate with something that is different. Because the DPS has more categories and the DPS is functionally fun is not something to be snatched out of the conversation. I do think that that's a relevant reason as to why people gravitate towards it, because you do have a lot of the legwork that you do perform in an Overwatch game,
I think
but you
that's a
do
very
also have a
fair
lot of
point.
people there.
I think that is a very
So
fair point, and like now that I'm thinking about it, like there's honestly like not a lot of characters in the tank roster that I resonate like that, like on a personal level, right? Like
right.
I enjoy the mechanics of a lot of these characters. Like playing Hammond is super fun, playing Roadhog is super fun, but I'm not naturally driven to these characters. Like when I first came into Overwatch, I was like, oh yeah, the tanks, that's cool. I'll try them out eventually. But like the first characters that I was driven to, I was like, ooh, McCree, cowboy with like a magnum that like shoots people. Like yes, like I want to play that guy, right? Or like same with Genji, I was like, ooh, cyborg ninja that you can do all these like fancy things with. I was driven to those characters first, and that might be the experience of a lot of people, like you said too. And even though like the tanks might speak to a certain kind of people, I think like the personalities in tanks are kind of like on the weirder side, right? Do you have a talking monkey? You have a hamster. You have like a mental asylum guy that
Patient.
yeah, patient that maneuvers with gravity. You have like yeah the robotic centaur. So I think it's a little bit more niche in that sense.
You
At
got the
least
gamer girl that has a mech suit from Gundam.
okay, but Diva does resonate with a huge amount of people, I think.
Diva is one of the most popular characters in the game.
Yeah,
Mercy and Diva are by far top 5 for a lot of players
yeah,
out there.
exactly. But
Genji, Diva, Mercy, and Reinhardt are like in the top 10.
again, that naturally
Top 5.
drives people to want to play that role, right? When they see Diva and they're like, "Oh yeah, girl in a mech that flies all over the battlefield. I want to play that."
Yeah. I I think that they need more characters because like they're trying to Overwatch's design team is different than their creative team, and I think that they have said as much. Every time a new hero is released, this kind of new cycle comes up as to why the hero is developed. Some heroes are developed based off of their original concept art. They're like, I like how this looks, I'm gonna make it, and let's put some function to the form, if that makes sense. Other
Mhm.
times they do what they did with Farah. They're like, let's put Rocket Man in the game, and it ended up being Rocket Man turns into Rocket Chick, and Rocket Chick happens to be from Egypt, and okay, here's the story that we have for Rocket Chick. Like that's Farah. But at the end of the day, you've got the two different things that are going to come up, and sometimes the ideas are just easier for DPS heroes, and I think that's honestly how a lot of this has just kind of come about.
Yeah.
And I
Shaz
do
says it over
like
here in the chat. He says, "I know there's a difference between what I can play versus what I want to play." And I think that happens to everyone in the game, right? Like
sure,
there might be a character you're really driven to, but mechanically it might not suit you, right? Or your style, and you might not be driven away from him because of that. But ideally, I
hmm
think that there should be enough characters and enough kind of like in every role that ideally you will find somebody that will resonate with you, and not only are you good at playing it, but you want to play it too, right? Like you want those two
yeah,
aligned as much as possible, or at least if I was Blizzard, that's what I would want.
yeah. I kind of agree with that because this game is kind of that distant futuristic sci-fi format, and honestly, the ironic thing is, in any game that I like to play outside of Destiny and Overwatch, traditionally sci-fi stuff is not my thing. I just don't like it. I play fantasy, I've played Warcraft, I play Zelda, any other game that's pretty much in that genre. I mean, Diablo kind of fits that, Hearthstone fits that, Yu-Gi-Oh, like all the anime and all the media that I like to enjoy is all this fantasy tropes. And outside of Moira, there's not really any of these warlocky, sorcerer, wizard type things in Overwatch. They're very practical with how things kind of outwork. They say, well, if this is in the game, then it comes about as through technology.
Yeah, technology and science are like the driving
hmm
factors in Overwatch for sure.
Right. So, like, I think that they could probably just take a couple steps back and see if they can make some arbitrary things. I mean, honestly, outside of Moira, I think Sigma's the closest they've ever come because they went full science in black holes and they're like, sure, it's more like warlock, sorcerer, wizardy
It
because
kind of
it's
has magic,
gravity.
but
Haha,
yeah, he's a
gravity.
he's a physicist that manipulates gravity, so it's very
Yeah,
based on like
exactly.
reality and science. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and then Tracer's whole thing is like time. So you got space and time between the two of those two characters, and then you got Moira who's like manipulating um, medicine to her will.
Everything in the world has a scientific explanation. Everything weird, right? Like talking monkey.
Right.
Oh, that was a scientific experiment in the moon that made him like super
Wraithwalk.
intelligent. Uh, I guess Reaper is the only one that's kind of mysterious. They've never really revealed like what happened to Reaper, and he has like some weird like
Moira's
hellish.
behind all of his tech, though. We know that.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We know that they've alluded to that. I wonder how they're gonna explain her tech. They haven't given us an explanation to that weird fade kind of thing. I know that he kind of brought him back from the dead, right? When the explosion happened with between Soldier 76 and him.
hmm
I think that's kind of what happened, but yeah, we don't know.
You you want to know a trope that we need is pure fire. We need a pure fire trope. Just nothing but
Oh
fire.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah, ignite people on
A
fire, kind of
pyro.
like Ash.
Yeah, basically Ash's explosion just on steroids. Everything's that. And it's a
Man,
tank.
that would be so
Make it a
nerve
tank.
wracking. But anyway, I
It's
think
sick.
to conclude, I think that we're advocates for trying new stuff out. I think that it's cool that Blizzard is trying new stuff out. I think that new modes or new patterns of how we play the game could be interesting. But I think at the end of the game, or at the end of the day, at the end of the game, at the end of the day, it's a matter of how you make these roles attractive, right? How do you get your actual population that is playing the game to enjoy the mode that you're doing? You can go many ways about it, right? You can adapt to the population and be like, okay, people just like DPS, so let's give them a bunch of DPS. Or you could look at your roles as you have them right now, and how do you incentivize people to play tank a little bit more? I think that it's naturally happening right now just because 222, like it is gonna force a portion of the population to play tank. We need those spots filled, right? Like there's a demand for tanks currently. There's a demand for good tanks. And because the demand exists, it's gonna put pressure on the community itself to sort of create those tanks, right? Some people might just not play the game. They might be like, okay, I don't want to deal with 222 anymore. But the people who do enjoy the game are gonna be like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to learn tank at one point because it's so needed, right? If I want faster queues, if I want to be
Yeah.
able to enjoy the game, I'll have to do it. But if we do go that route, then how do we make that tank role even more appealing, right? How do we bring those people in? And we talked about some really cool stuff over here, whether it be adding new tanks that make the role more exciting, whether it be modifying old tanks to make it more dynamic and interactive, or
Agreed.
whether it be adding certain personalities and personas that will attract into that role, right? Like why is DPS so attractive, right? Why do these characters resonate so much with people? How can we make those characters inside this role?
Yeah. I think that's a fair amount of time that we've dedicated to this. Let us know what you guys think in our Discord, or you can tweet at us. You can email us. Just let us know what you're thinking. Maybe some tank ideas that you have that are pretty cool. Feel free to share this on the official forums for Overwatch. I know they read those the most, and their tweets. But we got a couple people that we need to thank on our end. No new iTunes reviews this week, but if you guys like the show, that's the best way to support us outside for free that you can do besides listening and sharing. You can share the show anywhere you like. You can also just leave us an iTunes review. We'll read it on the show for you if you leave us 5 stars. If you want to support us financially, the best ways to do that is go over to Patreon. We have a patreon.com/Omnic Labs where you can find us. Cypher, Shazir, Shepard, and Krista Player are our top level sponsorship roles. And again, we're still taking more feedback on updating our Patreon with a big full swath of new things with this new year rolling out. We're going to be talking internally how we want to roll this out in the future. So please let us know. Additionally, we have some new Patreons this week. We've got 2 new Patreons at the platinum level that are potentially looking for coaching sessions. And if you're not, you can with your level. Chance H and Dave, thank you guys so much for joining on to the Lab Squad. If you guys want to do that, you can sign up at any level. But at the platinum level, that's your coaching spot. If you are at the sponsorship level, you get shout outs every week, and you also get other special perks in the Discord, as well as an exclusive role for patrons and diamonds. I think that's going to do it for pretty much everything else. Andres, do you want to let people know where they can find you specifically?
If you want to find me, you can do so on Twitter over at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games.
If you want to find me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram to tag not Rob. And if you want to talk to me about pretty much anything and everything, you can find us both in the Discord. And just remember, guys, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. We will see you all next week for episode 181. Shazir will be joining us, and we'll be talking about quality assurance in Overwatch.
I have nothing more to teach.